sustainability is the same way. It's not something that you add on to your life. We're not in the business of business. We're in the business of life.
Hello and welcome to the CSO Impact Podcast, where we talk to leaders in sustainability and experts in this ecosystem. We're discussing how we can work in a way that makes impact on the planet. I'm your host, Harald Neidhardt, and in this episode, we talk to Marc Buckley, who is not only a longtime friend, but he's the founder of the ALOHAS Regenerative Foundation and a leader in the field of climate activism, sustainability development, and global change. He has so many titles, we will learn more about them in a little bit, but he's talking to us today from Hamburg, and he is also an author in our book on leadership and sustainability, Futur. Hey, Marc, how are you?
Welcome to excellent.
I already feel there's a good vibe coming. So welcome to this Impact Podcast for CSOs, and thanks for being here with us. Hey, we know each other for probably more than a decade. Easy. One of the coolest things I remember, in our experience was in 2019, being in Songdo, South Korea, invited by the UN Climate Change Secretariat, the UNFCCC, and we worked together actually on developing a new program which is called Resilient Frontiers, which is developed by our common friend Youssef Nassef. We can go right away into exploring where we met and how we, developed our stories. But I'm in awe, and I learned so much from you in the beginning. You were my mentor in getting into this sustainability, I would say. So, but you had a great mentor starting here, maybe just with Al Gore. I mean, as a climate speaker, when he started 20 years ago, An Inconvenient Truth came out, and you were one of the first speakers to get trained by him. With this and with so many other backgrounds from you, how did you actually get started into the sustainability realm, if you want to say?
Well, I have to burst everybody's bubble because I'm not a climate refugee. I didn't see the climate god. I wasn't struck by some kind of natural catastrophe or disaster. It was a gradual learning over time, and the lights kept getting brighter and brighter, and I could no longer turn them off. I just saw the road and the path that the world was going on of unsustainable practices that I could no longer look back. Yeah. And so I don't really have this aha inspiring moment. I have some fabulous mentors, and yes, that's absolutely true. It's one of the first 50 people trained by Al Gore in his ranch in Carthage, Tennessee. That was in 2006, and he did that year 3 to 4 trainings in Carthage, Tennessee, but only one in his ranch. That's also where they filmed a portion of the Inconvenient Truth. And then later they mixed some of and I was standing in the back. I was a fat guy back then, so I was standing in the back, and I have a few seconds of fame where I'm in the Inconvenient Truth. And then they came out with a sequel to the Inconvenient Truth. And I was also in it because they showed the first training in his ranch in Carthage, Tennessee, but they showed a mutual training that Al Gore and I did together in the Philippines, in Manila, right after Hurricane Yolanda and Haiyan, where numerous people died, and the Philippines was severely destroyed and hit. And shortly after that, we did a big climate reality leadership training there. And then I later became the Germany, Austria country manager for Al Gore's Climate Reality Project, and did many trainings all around the world as a mentor, climate speaker, to train other people how to be a climate reality leader. I have to thank you because you're my mentor, because you've introduced me to numerous people all around the world, gotten me into Kinternet and events at H Farm and many things. And then you and I did these major tours around the world, different speaking events, and giving out our books and giving talks and kind of supporting each other as best as I can. I really appreciate your friendship and love and mentorship as well. I remember one time, last thing I got to say about that is with Eva Karetic. You introduced me at the Futur IO campus in Hamburg. Back then it was the MLove campus, I believe, before I went to Futur IO campus. And she later on, and that's why I'm telling it, she later on went to go in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to an Al Gore climate reality training. Later became a mentor. We trained some people in Berlin, and I just saw her in Malta. She lives here in Hamburg. She was in Malta, and we were both speaking at the Green Summit and Expo, Green Vision Summit and Expo there. So it's nice how these friendships, mentorships, and things kind of ripple, and we support each other on the journey. Last thing I need to say about that journey is I started out and health, safety, environment. I don't know if you ever heard that term. Probably about 30 years ago, there was these safety officers, wear your personal protection equipment. Whenever there was construction sites, you had to make sure was the organic farms being preserved? Was the health and safety being taken care of? Were you not taking hay or bad things into certain construction areas? I used to be a health and safety environment officer, and then that went to environmental officer, conservation officer, compliance. Then I went to corporate social responsibility. Then I went to sustainable development officer, resilience officer, chief sustainability officer, and it just kept going down the line. And today, I would say we're still at the CSOs, but we're nudging ourselves towards this regenerative development officers, kind of that trend. But I've seen the progress over many years.
I think that's exactly, let's deep dive into this in a second, because we're all on this way towards more regenerative futures. And let's say the general public just gets to grips with sustainability, I guess, over the last couple of years, and the internal ecosystem is already going forward. Now, I have to, let's say, just quickly compliment you again, because you were the author in all of the 3 Future IO books. I think the only one who is in all of the 3. So again, your voice and your experience means so much to us. We touched a little bit about your career, let's say how you went from different roles into, let's say, more sustainability, and now you're, let's say, one of the most prolific climate speakers and activists in this way. Now, the role of CSOs is also evolving in this way. It starts somewhere in the company, and somebody, let's say, puts a head in the ring and say, either they get called because they're in financial area or in the PR area or so, and all of a sudden they get into this area of leading, maybe in the title of a chief sustainability officer. Now, have you seen, before we touch again on this role, have you seen that you have been to, let's say, all of the COPs since, I think, Paris, the engagement of corporates and the role of corporates in this sustainability area? Because UN is, let's say, a government, and you have a lot of NGOs, you have research scientists in there, but now more and more corporates, I think we could see that or you could see that in Dubai, are engaged, are on the platform. Tell us a little bit how you saw the role of, let's say, just corporations or this, let's say, the private sector, if we call it like this, evolve over the last couple of years.
Immensely. So I would say it's been evolving for about 70 years, and you've seen this transition, and it's gotten more and more. So it was more of a requirement over the years because of reporting, because of then compliance, because of a certain OSHA, occupational health and standard administrations of the U.S. and also in Europe, kind of more regulations for people's protection, but then a certain amount of protection for organic and environmental things. And so it's constantly been progressing as I listed to you with all the different titles that there are. But the biggest progress is back then, there was usually one health and safety officer, one sustainability officer, and basically it was responsible for the entire organization, and most of the time didn't have a lot of support from the C-suite and the rest of the employees. He just was kind of the sustainability police, making sure everyone had their safety hat, make sure they had all their compliance and were being good, and they didn't get any major fines or things. that's the wrong role, because we're all chief sustainability officers. The good chief sustainability officers that we're seeing, they have full support of their C-suite. They have full support of their entire organization, and they empower their organization to see that everybody's a sustainability officer. And then when the entire organization's on board, not only is their well-being as an employee taken care of, but the entire organization thrives and flourishes. We've seen numerous things. One big one that was just a huge thing was this Unilever Nestle battle that we saw for numerous years going on. Unilever had Paul Pullman, who they called him Green Paul, as the CEO, and he was really leading this environmental movement. He's a original SDG advocate with another mentor of mine, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. And he was just always environment. Let's take care of people, planet, and profit. It comes last. Let's make sure that we do the right thing. Whereas at that time, Nestle was like, we don't care about how we use our water. We don't care about this. And their stocks just plummeted, and their organization, they wanted to do a merger. That didn't happen. And then just a lot of major impacts. At one point in time, they had $58 million in risk just to prevent and kind of work against all the environmental things that they were getting fined on. And now, today, they learn from the example of Unilever. They're one of the world's leading front runners for regenerative ag and moving forward. Not perfect. Unilever's not perfect either, but they're really understanding the close tie to sustainability and the environment moving forward. Having said that, all over the world, we put sustainability under the guise of work. We don't see sustainability as something as us as an individual in our home, in our private lives. We see, that's something that occurs at work, and it can be turned on and off. And there's one person who has a job for that, and that's their role. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That world and that ship has left a long time ago. That's not how it works. We've learned that everybody is involved in this process, and that's what's really going to make the big changes in the future.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful. And you touch upon what comes to mind is the Imperial College Maturity Index. They actually looked at the different levels of CSOs where, somebody more or less is just starting in the PR department and then really has a budget, the C-suite access and or is part of the C-suite. And Sandrine Dixon-DeClève from the Club of Rome said, well, maybe the CSOs, if they're really in charge of strategy, should be maybe the next CEOs. You have the engagement, or let's say you have been talking about the award. We have done the CSO awards together. You've been the chair of the nomination committee. Thank you again for that work, helping us to select the final 20. How is, let's say, digging deeper into the CSO role? What is how can we even make this more important? And how do you see her role in the organization evolve if you say everybody has to make it? In the end, it's a culture change probably to do it, that everybody on everybody's desk understands what the CSO has in mind. What's your point of view on this kind of role?
It's really, I see it as a leadership role to set the bar high, and you give a lot of motivation and show people how easy sustainability is, because it makes work and life a lot easier. When I mentioned kind of that we put sustainability as an add-on in the work sector, and this is something that you and I have dealt with over many years, and the trainings and the work we've done with technology and innovations, and looking towards the future, we always used to talk about this work-life balance. I have to apologize to everybody, because there is no work-life balance. That's pure bullshit. It never existed and never will. If you're one person at work and another person in your life, you're probably bipolar, schizophrenic, or you have split personalities or something, or you're facing a burnout, because there's only life. There's no separation. When I'm at work, I'm this person, and when I'm at home, it just doesn't work that way. And so sustainability is the same way. It's not something that you add on to your life. We're not in the business of business. We're in the business of life. We're in the business of life to make it better. Development means that we want to develop the world and our businesses and our organizations to thrive and flourish, to really be abundant and to sustain ourselves, our supply chain, our employees, our wages, to sustain that over time. And the way that happens, yes, through sustainability, but really that push towards regeneration. How do we continually regenerate, revive our supply chain, our employees, our profits, and that, so that we are not truly being self-sufficient, but we have those good business models that really support the entire infrastructure, the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, which we're hearing in the environmental social governance and the taxonomy for the EU, that those are all rightly in place, and we have a thriving business. The world's biggest problems, you and I, Singularity University, Peter Diamandis, he said the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. Yeah. But they are the biggest opportunities, period, to do it right, to solve those problems. And if we do it right and we use the tools that these CSOs are using, that we're teaching them, that they're teaching us, that they're applying, things just go really well. One last thing is this, something just came out from the European Union under the Green Deal, the European Green Deal, under the taxonomy. It's the digital product passport. Now people are saying, oh, we've got another thing to do. We've got to do this more reporting. We've got to create a digital product passport. This makes everyone's life easier. Eventually, if everything has a digital product passport, scope 1, 2, 3 in emissions, life cycle assessment, and all that reporting that was so tedious that we waited and pushed off to someone else, it's done automatically because we already have a digital product passport that's given that transparency of those products. So now we just collect that data and send it off to do our reporting. I hope to be in a future where we're not 5-10 years from now saying, hey, Harald, how's your reporting going? Did you get your reporting done? Are you complying on your ESG? Holy hell, we don't want to be in that kind of world. We want to set the bar higher and say, we're not even worrying about that now. We're moving on to these much better worlds and these abundance, and we're really doing some positive things to fix the world.
Right. Thank you so much. I mean, Marc, you are a well of knowledge, and I only can encourage everybody to read your, the article in the book to dig deeper. Now, you touched upon the regenerative economy, and I think in our closing, coming to closing soon, I want to give you an opportunity to say, well, how do we go? What do you see already happening in the regenerative field? How can we make people more aware that sustainability, could be just do less harm? We got to see, we are both futurists, so we got to see a little bit more towards these desirable futures. And you have a great catchphrase that you ask people. But what is your ways towards a regenerative future? What are, either examples you see, success stories, first things, and where people have to look to learn a little bit more about this upcoming economy, if you will, of regeneration?
Well, it's crazy because never before in human history have we seen so many books being released about ecological economic models. Just in the last 4 years, there's been more than 30 books released on ecological economic models. Now, most people don't even know what that is, but we definitely know what economic models are: capitalism, GDP, growth, macro, micro, the ones that haven't worked, the ones that create bubbles and then burst, and then we bail them out and we just go right back to that bad system. That's the definition of insanity. Keep doing and repeating something over that's not working, or bailing it out, wasting money. And I was fortunate enough to study at the University of Maryland with Herman Daly. He was the second father of ecological economics. And it was a pure pleasure to do that because he was formerly at the World Bank as an economist for the World Bank under the United Nations, working on economics. And guess what happened? He got so fed up with GDP, extractive and capitalism and growth models. He left the World Bank, did an open letter in the New York Times and said, we need to get off capitalism. We need to get rid of growth, post-growth, beyond growth. And he came up with steady state economics, and he started teaching ecological economics. I want everyone to know that there are more than 5 ecological economic models that you already know about. You know them well. You don't think you do, but I promise you do. One of them, circular economy, donut economics, regenerative economics. Sustainable development goals are an ecological economic model. One that you and I like with Sandrine Dixon is the Earth for All model. That takes 5 ecological economic models, puts them all into one: planetary boundaries, post-growth, well-being economics, donut economics, and circular economy, all into one, which is fabulous. And yes, the SDGs are an ecological economic model, and regenerative economics. So there's plenty of choices. And it's not, and the great thing about them, the ecological economic models, you don't have to say, I got to pick one of them. You can combine them all to work for you and your country and your city and your business. So that's really a cool thing about economics and how that works. And what we're trying to do is educate people. How do you apply one of these ecological economic models in a current capitalistic or growth or GDP type of business or world, wherever you're operating in? And that is possible to set the bar higher. And some of those things are what we talk about in the book and what we talk about at our CSO events, and to try to give that training and awareness to the new CEOs, because honestly, up until just the last few years, Harald, you and I have seen this. We'll hear from somebody and say, oh, yeah, I just got the chief sustainability officer position. And say, weren't you in marketing before? Didn't you come from human resources? And they're like, yeah, can you help me? I don't have any training. I don't know what I'm doing. That's okay. But we need to start getting some training out there to those people so that they don't feel alone, so that they don't panic, so that they know the direction, because there's not a lot of training and help for people to feel well in the positions. It's one of the best positions you could have in your organization, because you should have the support of your entire organization behind you.
Super insightful. Now, for my next question, if we go from regenerative economies to the future, you talk also about future fitness in this area. Can you tell us a little bit what you mean by this?
Yeah, so in the 21st century, the well-being and even survival of humanity really crucially depends on this eco-literacy, that we all have eco-literacy and have an ability to understand just the basic principles of ecology, principles of sustainability, and live accordingly. One thing that I just want to be aware of, if we have sustainability, that builds a nice foundation, but sustainability isn't an end date. It's always sustaining ourselves forever. It's just kind of a nice solid foundation. And if one day a city, a village, a country is hit by a war or a climate catastrophe or something, climate refugees, and in hours, that sustainability can completely be wiped out. At the beginning of our podcast, you mentioned Resilience Frontiers and how we worked on that with Futur IO, Future Literacy Labs, and UNESCO, talking about resilience. The reason we talk about resilience is we need, after those wars, after those natural disasters and climate change, we need some form of resilience to have energy, water, food, logistics, sanitation, just the basics the very next hour, not weeks, months, or years. And so this is a bad example, but Hurricane Maria wiped out Puerto Rico, 100% of its energy and 90% of its farm and agriculture. And they're still not rebuilt, and it probably won't be 6 to 7 years till they're rebuilt. Now, if you have resilience, you automatically have sustainability in it, and you have a little bit of help. That next step is regeneration. And regeneration not only has resilience in it, it deeply has sustainability in it. And so that's the true goal, because we continually regenerate. Now, how that ties to being future fit, I hope you can see that path or that journey that we're on. And it's not esoteric or woo-hoo. It's actually a path of the way the world has always worked. In our circles, and when we're at Davos, people are taking regeneration into their mouths and talking about it, but they don't realize it's 3.8 billion years old. It's been around. That's how life on Earth started, is through regeneration. And if we could take those principles and apply them into our organizations, our life, it's a much better and future fit model. Having said that, let's take, for example, the ESG taxonomy or the European Green Deal. The taxonomy was supposed to come out in 2020, but because of Brexit, the pandemic, the COVID-19, and the Ukraine war, they were like, oh, we need to wait a little bit. And they waited till July 12th, 2021, and then finally released it. I sit on the PSF commission, and I can promise you, it's already 7 years outdated, because the commission was started well before they released it. And then something always happens right before the release to delay the release, right? Or it's not ready. And so I just want people, instead of playing catch up to the taxonomies or the new laws or regulations coming out, let's be future fit and realize it's great that they brought out a new regulation, but let's set the bar high. We know that's a low bar. They've been working on the language and wording for 7 years already. And let's be future fit. And so that's kind of what we want to instill in all the CSOs that we have. These are people with long visions for the future, for where sustainability is going, that it's moving into resilience and regeneration. They're thinking well beyond the reporting and just meeting the regulations. The great thing about the taxonomy is you can no longer outsource that. Your scope 1, 2, 3, your reporting, your CSRD, and all that can no longer be given to someone else to do. You have to actually change your internal business model. And that's a good thing. It's not something that we need to panic about. It actually, it seems like a force or a pressure, but it's a better business model, and you will have that resilience and regeneration if you do it, and you'll be very thankful for what that's providing your organization. And so those are the tools and things that we want to think about. How can we be future fit so that we're not just saying, oh, let's play catch up to that model, and it's really already outdated. And so I just wanted to kind of go a little bit deeper into that. To kind of think about it. We can get specific at another time about how to do that. You touch upon so many things, and I know that you're involved in so many committees and you have so many leadership roles which you brought over time. Now, can you tell us about maybe a project, a couple of projects that or achievements that you are especially proud of? What are you working on right now? You working with investment banks to people in the food chain and policymakers. So let's touch a couple of these just to see where maybe one of the projects or a couple of things you are actively working on right now. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm excited. May 12th, we'll launch this book, the CSO book. Is really good. I'm really very pleased with my contribution and the contributions of the other CSOs and the leaders in that. I think it's a great tool and a great example to show where we're going. So I'm excited about that. I work all around the world, and there's a big event coming up in September. It's with the United Nations. It's called Summit of the Future in New York, and you'll also be there, hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything goes well there. There's not only the New York UN General Global Compact Leaders Summit, there's the UN General Assembly, there's the Summit of the Future, there's the SDG Summit, there's the Climate March, which happens. and probably about another dozen things and side events that I'm forgetting about.
Climate Week, 500 events.
Yeah, there's like 500 events, and it'll be big. So I'll be there. And the Summit of the Future is really important. I don't know if you read Kim Stanley Robinson's book, The Ministry of the Future, but in that book, right in the beginning, he talks about how the UN Paris Agreement, he talks about how the UNFCCC and this Ministry of the Future in his book. Well, now we're having the Summit of the Future, kind of some things. We're thinking about the future, and that goes to the last question I just answered. How do we be future fit? So we're trying to really make sure that everybody's a futurist and thinking well in advance, because we need this intergenerational, or the 7 generations thinking well in advance, not just to think towards your retirement, but to think for a better world beyond that. I'm a grandpa. I have 6 grandchildren, 4 children, and I'd like to leave them with that legacy. But besides that, I just love humanity, and I'd love to say we didn't leave you a bad world, but we left you a world that's pretty good. And we tried to fix some things instead of handing them over something that they would be disappointed with. Yeah, that's some things.
About Asia, there's one thing you're doing right now. So we have a couple of minutes to.
Yeah. I'm in Asia. I'm just starting. There's a big event that's been going on for years around the world. It's called Sustainable Brands. And I've been speaking for them all around the world, and I really love it. Through that organization, I've met some wonderful people, and we're doing the next step. It's called Regen Asia. And so we're specifically starting in Asia, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan. We're really focusing on Asia. But we want to do these regenerative events. And it's not just regenerative ag. Everyone kind of knows Marc's the hippie farmer and likes farming. But it's about regenerative economies. It's about regenerative health. It's about regenerative business models. And we really want to push that in Asia, because they're the rising billions. They're changing a lot of things, and they need to get into that regenerative mindset thinking for the future. And I'm really excited for that. And you can find that under regen.asia. And more will be coming on that. There will be a big event in December in Thailand as the launch, and some workshops and things that I'm pretty excited about.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much, Marc, for your insights, for your, let's say, for the work you do actually since so many years. And you touched upon the multi-generational. I can maybe share that you're coming from a family who have been in organic farming. Your grandfather was actually from there. So closing this circle and having everybody else think about this regenerative model is really important. So thank you for your service and everything you do. For everything, more about Marc, more about his guests in his podcast, I can only recommend Inside Ideas, which is already at how many 100 episodes you have?
It's close to 200 episodes. We're going to get some more. I've got some great. Vandana Shiva's coming up next. We've got Glenn Albrecht. He wrote Earth Emotions, and some other great ones coming on. So I'm excited.
You have, really one of the biggest selection of the right book authors, or that you interview. I really like the podcast. Thank you for that as well. But it's a tip for everybody who wants to dig deeper into Marc's world and how he thinks. Thank you so much for listening in on this episode. I really found it so inspiring again. And thank you for your time and your friendship, Marc. See you soon again in one of these events, and where we, drive the sustainability leadership forward with CSOs and everybody who wants to get into this field. Follow us in this podcast series, but also follow Marc for every insights he will share. Thank you, Errol, so much. Thank you, Marc.
Thanks, Harald. I appreciate it.